Yeah, so male-born sex offenders who self-identify as women can be placed on female-only NHS wards. That's what hospital trusts have actually put forward in their guidance. It explicitly says trans people should feel safe in hospitals. Now, according to the Telegraph, that's despite the fact that policies have been put in place and by an order from the Department of Health that hospitals have to actually provide single-sex wards. You have to ensure that sex-segregated spaces like that in a hospital. Can you imagine a place where a woman would be more vulnerable than in a hospital? I certainly can't. No. And I think this goes to the bigger question, Patrick, for me, about how we've taken for granted the role of language and gendered terms for men and women, because it might sound a bit airy-fairy and you think, oh, well, here he goes again. But gone are, the days when you wouldn't expect in my lifetime, even when I was at school, I left school 10 years ago, you wouldn't expect to see stories like male-born sex offenders who identify as women on female-only NHS wards, or male-born weightlifters competing with women at the Olympics. Looking through all of this, you just think the assault on women, I think, is getting bigger and bigger, not just in our language, but actually in attempts through law as well. And I really worry as we discussed last week on this very show, I really worry when someone like J.K. Rowling, for example, who comes forward and says, well, I, as someone who suffered domestic violence and had to use a women's refuge and all the rest of it, when she can't even make an argument, a pretty nuanced argument about the protection of sex-segregated spaces. You've got to think this debate is going a little bit too off-kilter for my liking, Patrick.
I agree 100% with that. And I think, all too often the people making these decisions are men. The people deciding that they're doing the right thing are men. And the people being put at risk are women. And I always wonder, Darren, where's the feminism in all of this? Where's the feminism in allowing someone born a man, to compete against women at the Olympics? You don't see that the other way around, do you? Where's the feminism in allowing women who are possibly on a hospital ward, they might already be drugged up, they might be on whatever, they might be incapacitated, they might be in so much pain they can't move, to be put on a ward with someone who is born a man, who now identifies as a woman, who is a sex offender. How is that good for women?
Yeah, no, of course it's not. And if anything, it's misogynistic in and of itself, right? It's misogynistic to actually suggest that a woman has her rights are less important than the rights of an individual who self-identifies as a woman. We're seeing this in prisons as well, where vulnerable women who have been incarcerated, who are in prison, are seeing that the people who identify as women are being put in the same prisons as them. And it has already led to examples of abuse. And you start to think about this sort of thing and you think, well, it used to be in my lifetime, as I say, I keep going back to this, but it just shows how fast everything's moving in this debate. In my lifetime, it is obscene, I think, to suggest that you'd have the pages of The Guardian waxing lyrical about anything other than protecting women's sex-based rights. Yet in my political lifetime, very short as it is, we've seen that conversation has massively changed, and all of a sudden, the rights of women are at the bottom of the pile, and I think that's a damn disgrace.
It absolutely is, and I just find it, like you said there, the inability to have a discussion about it because you're cancelled, you're labelled transphobic. Someone like J.K. Rowling, who's got a lived experience of being a woman, and got a lived experience as well of actually suffering at the hands of men as well. She didn't have a particularly great time earlier on in her life, right? And actually her views now are totally irrelevant because someone who was born Keith, right, who now decides they want to call themselves Kathleen, their rights now trump everyone else's. And I find that bizarre. And you're right, again, it is another hypocrisy of the left as far as I'm concerned now. And it's another thing where the Guardian kind of has to hang their heads in shame about it. It's all very well and good saying things like, we need to have people coming over to this country, we need to be welcoming and open and throw our arms over to people coming across the channel. Well, actually, all too often, some of those people coming across the channel happen to be from parts of the world where they do have quite backward views when it comes to things like the LGBTQ plus community. They do have backward views when it comes to things like women's rights, etc. And yet they're actively encouraging them to come to this country. And then we have an issue here, don't we? We're all pro-trans. Right, I'm not anti-trans. I couldn't care less what anyone wants to identify as. Absolutely. But I could care if my daughter was on a hospital ward and someone who's basically a man identifying as a woman, choosing to identify as a woman, what is allowed to be on that ward. I don't really particularly want to live in that society. But let's move away from that one now and talk about something else, because some people might have been offended by what we just said there. I would argue, Darren, that they're hypersensitive, right? Now, we're talking about hypersensitivity in the office. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we've got a report from the Times on a lawyer who claimed that she was wrongly sacked from her cushy £100,000 a year job after, not bad, eh? I'd take it.
Nice work if you can
after
get it.
being sexually, not sexual harassment, just to clarify. After she's lost her case after a judge warned against encouraging a culture of hypersensitivity. So this lawyer, I'm probably going to mispronounce the name, so I do apologise, but Nirosha Sithirapathy, I think is how I pronounce it.
I think you've got a pretty good stab at that, mate.
Yeah. She was legal counsel at a pharmaceutical research company, and she argued that she was discriminated against because of her age and her sex. And her boss had said to her, after he questioned why she didn't want to take up another role in Switzerland, the boss said, "What personal reasons have you got to turn this down? You're not married, you don't have children, and you don't have a boyfriend." Now, the boss also said
hammer it home, Dave.
Oh,
thanks,
absolutely.
mate. Oh,
the boss also
another Bridget Jones movie for on Valentine's Day
it's
evening.
a bit like that, me at home with my Haagen-Dazs. Not Ben and Jerry's, because we've all cancelled them.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But yeah, the boss said that he would have said the same thing to a bloke, right? Now, that all seems pretty... I'm not too fussed about any of this. I am fussed about the actual ruling, where the judge said the comments were perhaps unfortunate and awkward. Now, however... She goes on to say that we bear in mind the importance of not encouraging a culture of hypersensitivity or imposing legal liability to every unfortunate phrase. And this is so important because I think fundamentally what we're at risk of doing in this, as far as speech and debate is concerned, are creating a climate of self-censorship and a chilling effect on free expression. Now, I think you should be well within your rights, Patrick, to turn around to your boss and say, well, actually, I'm not too comfortable with that question that you just asked us for a multitude of reasons, or indeed not give any reason whatsoever and just let them know that you were uncomfortable. But I think to be able to just point and say, well, actually, that was sexual harassment, this was X, Y, and Z, well, no, because you've got to be able to actually, I think, have these discussions in a workplace. I mean, to me, it's of genuine, I guess, it's non-serious, really. It's non-threatening a question to just ask, well, why do you not want to take that job? So you actually get an understanding of where your employee wants to be within the workplace, and actually it's better for, I guess, workplace cohesion if you know where everyone's sort of at within the team. And I can't get excited about this. I really can't. But I can get excited about the ruling because I think it's important to actually ensure that in workplaces, free expression isn't quashed.
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely bob on. I think it's about time someone stood up for this kind of stuff as well. And I think that the less of this that you have, more bosses are so fearful. You end up with more misunderstandings in the workplace and potentially even worse stuff. Darren, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. Darren Grimes there. Grime time.